Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions. And today I plan to present during this webinar the main conclusions, findings and recommendations of the report on the final evaluation of the strategic framework for the implementation of the Basel Convention for 2012-2021. Following this presentation, this overview presentation on the findings and recommendations of the report, I will also present to you how the matter is expected to be presented or considered by the of the parties at its 15th meeting, and then also inform you about the current opportunity offered to parties and observers to provide further contributions to this work. So let me start the presentation with some background on the strategic framework. As you would remember, the strategic framework was adopted by the Basel COP-10 in 2011 in its decision BC 10/2. The strategic framework consists of a vision, guiding principles, means of implementation, as well as 3 strategic goals that have been broken down into objectives and specific indicators within the document of the strategic framework. While adopting the strategic frameworks, parties were also encouraged to take specific actions to implement the strategic framework through the activities, for example, listed in the program of work of the Convention throughout bienniums. The next Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention is expected to consider the final evaluation of the strategic framework and also look at possible recommendations from stemming from the report. I would like now to provide a brief overview of the approach that was adopted for the preparation of the report on the final evaluation. So for each objective of the strategic framework, the report aimed at comparing progress that was made from the year 2011 to the year 2019. So the year 2011 is considered the baseline year, the strategic framework, because that was the year before the strategic framework was adopted or started to be implemented, let's say. And then the year 2019 is the final reference year, basically the latest point in time where the analysis could be conducted. The baseline was for 2011, was established by the Basel COP-12 in 2015 through the preparation of a report that consisted of party responses to a specific questionnaire on the strategic framework. So the baseline was established. For the final reference year for 2019, the information was gathered from different sources. The first one was the questionnaire that was used for the baseline, but that was related to the year 2019. So there was a call for parties' responses to that questionnaire. So this information was used for the year 2019. The COP also adopted another approach, which was to consider additional sources of information that would speak to the indicators and the objectives. And so this new approach adopted by COP-13 was actually staged in 2 steps. The COP asked first to compile all relevant sources of data related to the indicators of the strategic framework. And when this done was reviewed by the OEWG and then by the COP, then the report could be prepared based on these additional sources of information. This is also to be noted that at COP-13, the COP established a small intersessional working group, the strategic framework, which was to assist the Secretariat in the preparation of the report of the final evaluation. So this group indeed conducted its work in the previous biennium and in the current biennium towards the preparation of this final evaluation report. Today, as I said before, Mr. Samhan, the chair of the group, is expected to join us, but I can also see several members of the group that are on the list of participants of this webinar. In case there are questions also on specific recommendations from the group, I would turn to them. So on that slide, you can see then, in a nutshell, the main sources of information that was used for the preparation of the report on the final evaluation. So as indicated before, you have the baseline questionnaire, sorry, that was run again for the 2019 year. So the questionnaire was answered by, let's say, a bit more than 20% of the parties. So in 2011, you had 20% of parties responding to the questionnaire. And for the 2019 questionnaire, you have a 27% of all parties. So this provided indeed information, but with some limitations given the rate of submission. Other sources of information was the discussions also held during the 14th meeting of the Conference of the Parties in 2019. So comments were also received during the COP and were requested to be considered when preparing the final report. And as noted before, the new approach adopted by COP-13, there was a compilation of information, of sources of information to be used for the preparation of the report. So here you have a wide range of sources of information identified there and that were used for the preparation of the report. You have obviously the annual national reports under the convention. So for the annual reports, the report was in a position to consider data for 2011 and data for 2017. 2017 because that was the set of the most comprehensive data that could be collected for national reports at the end of December 2019 when the group and the Secretariat was supposed to prepare its report. Other sources of information considered in the report was work done by the ICC, in particular the classification of parties' compliance performance with national reporting obligation. Publications also under the convention, like the Waste Without Frontiers, was also very much used in the preparation of the report. That was for more the quantitative information. Regarding qualitative information, a large range of information was used, like specific decisions under the convention, additional work under the SEC, technical assistance reports prepared by the Secretariat, or reports on activities of the regional centers, among others. I'm just here providing you with an overview, but other sources were also used. Before going into the specific findings and recommendations of the report, it was important to note that there are some limitations to the report, notably the data limitation, that it was felt that it was indeed difficult sometimes to find the information or data necessary to assess progress in meeting the indicators. For several reasons, but one of them is the fact that 61% of parties report, for example, so there are 39% of parties that, for example, submitted reports for the year 2016. So it made it indeed difficult to have a comprehensive assessment of the situation with regard to certain indicators. Additionally to the data limitation, the framework, it was also felt that there were limitations with some of the indicators that were set out in the framework, meaning that some indicators perhaps were not necessarily relating very closely to the objectives that they were supposed to inform. So to address this gap, this limitation, the group has also made additional efforts to use other sources of information to better measure progress towards the objective and the goal. So now we will go into the specifics of the report, starting with goal 1 of the strategic framework, which is effective implementation of parties' obligations. So goal 1 has four specific objectives. The first specific objective is to reach a common understanding among parties of the definition, interpretation, and terminology of waste covered by the Convention, including the distinction between waste and non-waste. So with this objective in mind, the framework had also identified an indicator to measure progress towards this objective 1.1, which was the number of agreed technical guidelines that assist parties in reaching a common understanding on definitions, interpretations, and terminologies covered by the Convention. So for objective 1.1, the report concludes that the Convention was successful developing technical guidelines that enhance parties' common understanding, as well as was successful to develop guidance, documents, manuals, a glossary of terms, and also has launched a process, for the review of the annexes of the Convention to add legal clarity. So that's one of the findings under this objective 1.1. And it was this general statement was particularly true for the e-waste technical guidelines, in which the COP invested significant level of efforts to adopt the e-waste technical guidelines on an interim basis. However, from some of the data, it seems that some parties may not be using the technical guidelines to the full extent. And then also the data collected indicated that the number of technical assistance activities conducted on the technical guidelines has gone down from the baseline year. So with these conclusions or those findings in mind, the report sets out a number of recommendations towards objective 1.1. Some recommendations, and this is valid for all the objectives, all the recommendations for all the objectives, is that some of the recommendations are directed to work or processes under the conventions, current ones, while some other recommendations are more directed to the development of a possible new strategic framework. So more like a lessons learned from the current strategic framework, and putting forward forward-looking recommendations should the COP wish to develop and adopt a new strategic framework in the future. So for the sake of time, I would focus highlight only on the specific recommendations that are to directed to work or ongoing processes under the convention, but are not specifically addressed to a possible future strategic framework. So I will only address those recommendations that are highlighted, underlined, sorry, on the slides. So for objective 1.1, the report highlights that it should be standard that every decision adopting new technical guidelines or updated technical guidelines that the Secretariat should be requested to undertake technical assistance activities as a recurring item of decisions on technical guidelines. And then after the adoption of technical guidelines, there should be requests for dissemination to all parties. The webinars and training activities should be offered by the Secretariat for all relevant regions. In addition, it's also proposed, suggested to the COP that a short document should be prepared that explain how the technical guidelines can be used at the national level. And also this could be part of each training activity undertaken on technical guidelines. All those activities would need to be included in the budget activity fact sheets of the upcoming biennia and included in the proposed work program and budget of the convention. On objective 1.1, there was another recommendation pertaining to ongoing work or processes under the convention. As highlighted, there was before, one of the findings of the report was that yes, a significant level of effort was made by the COP to develop and adopt on an interim basis the e-waste technical guidelines. And so the report concludes that effort should be continued in that direction, meaning to finalize the e-waste technical guidelines. On objective 1.2, so objective that aims at preventing and combating illegal traffic in hazardous and other wastes. So for that objective 1.2, we have one indicator and two sub-indicators, as you can see. The first, the indicator is the parties that have reached an adequate level of administrative and technical capacity to prevent and combat illegal traffic, and judicial capacity to deal with cases of illegal traffic. And two sub-indicators, number of parties that develop and execute training programs for the staff involved, and number of controls and inspections carried out. So for the indicator and sub-indicators, it was difficult to assess progress due to the shortage of data, the levels of administrative and technical capacities of parties. So it was a bit difficult to find available information for that. Also, the fact that the reporting rate, submission rate is at 60% of all the parties limits the information available on that. Noting also that very few aspects of the indicators are included in the national reporting format. So yes, there was basically very few information sources to inform the indicator or sub-indicators. However, looking at other sources of information, the report highlights that the level of illegal traffic is, however, difficult to establish at this point in time. There is little data available about this in 2011 because the reporting format the time did not request for such information. However, there is a new development, the fact that the ICC has a mandate to conduct a scoping exercise about the extent of illegal traffic under the convention using information collected through Table 9 of the national reporting format. And through this scoping exercise undertaken by the ICC, more information would be then provided to the COP on the extent of illegal traffic under the convention. Additionally, it was noted through various sources of information that illegal traffic is nonetheless still an important concern for parties to the convention, noting also that technical assistance activities on that issue has decreased and are subject to the availability of funding. Additional conclusions or findings is also that the COP has taken a number of activities to develop guidance manuals, on providing assistance to parties on the issue of combating illegal traffic. And that has been noted in particular through the work of the ICC. And at that time, no new manual seems to be needed. Nevertheless, as you will see from one of the recommendations, perhaps review of the need for such a guidance is still needed. So for the specific recommendations set out in the report about preventing and combating illegal traffic, you find recommendation 27. Sorry, I forgot to say that those are recommendations that are set out in paragraphs of the executive summary of the report. So regarding recommendations set out in paragraph 27 of the executive summary report, it was recommended then that the number, type, and geographic location of training activities in the forthcoming biennium should be guided by the outcome of the ICC activities, including the scoping activity exercise that will be presented to COP-15. And that given the limited funding available for technical assistance activities, the approach for training on illegal traffic to first emphasize as a first step for parties lacking it to be trained on national legislation development. And then for parties with national legislation in place, then training should be extended to border control or border enforcement and prosecution of illegal traffic cases as appropriate. So those countries have the legal basis for undertaking such activities. And as I highlighted before, the report also highlights that the ICC should use its standing mandate on review and updating of reports to verify whether earlier manuals, guidance manuals on the topic of preventing and combating illegal traffic need to be updated. On objective 1.3, this objective is about
no feedback.
So improving requirements pertaining to a notification of national definitions of hazardous and other wastes. I think I can hear someone sound. So for this one, there was one indicator, percentage of parties that have notified national definitions of hazardous waste to the Secretariat in accordance with Article 3 of the Basel Convention. So for that objective, yes, it wasn't really felt. So that was one of the limitations mentioned before. It was felt that the indicator to measure progress towards this objective 1.3 was not really helpful, let's say, to assess this progress. Because indeed, national definitions just one side of the whole of the managing notifications. So there are mainly recommendations towards the development of a new strategic framework if the COP decides to do so. Nevertheless, the report was able to provide more findings this issue, and based on the information that was available, it seemed that it was likely that approximately 50 to 60% of the parties have implemented all the requirements of the control system. So towards so this is an indication from data collected that speaks in favor of meeting the objective 1.3. Moving on, so for goal 1, we also have the last objective is objective 1.4, which is on generating, providing, collecting, transmitting, and using reliable qualitative and quantitative information and data regarding export, import, and generation as required under Article 13 of the Convention. And for that objective 1.4, there was one indicator in the framework, which was the percentage of parties reporting information to the Secretariat under Article 13. Sorry. So the finding the report under the 1.4 objective is that reporting has increased by 10% over the life of the strategic framework. It was at 51% of parties in 2011, and it's attaining 61% of parties in 2016. So there has been progress in national reporting submission rate. Nevertheless, as flagged before, there are still 39% of parties that are not reporting, and that creates indeed a data limitation for that strategic framework report, but also is a systemic compliance issue as a whole, as under the convention, as it's flagged already by the ICC. As you know, there are various reasons for difficulties in national reporting compliance, lack of national inventory, lack of national legislation, lack of capacity. Additionally, other reasons may be experience like lack of understanding of the benefits of reporting or lack of understanding of the consequences of non-reporting. So with these findings in mind, a number of recommendations have been put forward in the report. One of which is recommendation 37, whereby the COP should urgently consider additional strategies for improving national reporting, taking into account the outcome of the classification of compliance performance for 2016 and 17, and including the results of the work done under the mandate given to the ICC to consider elaborating and further assessing measures not included under paragraphs 20A and 20B of the terms of reference of the committee that may be required when a party has not submitted its national report for 2 or more years since the report due in 2016. So this is the main recommendation. There is also recommendation 14, but it's a repeat of the recommendation I just said regarding the invitation to the COP to take due consideration of the recommendations from the ICC regarding the terms of reference of the committee. Now moving on to goal 2, which is on strengthening the environmentally sound management of hazardous waste and other wastes. So here we have objective, the first objective, which is to pursue the development of environmentally sound management of hazardous waste and other wastes, especially through the preparation of technical guidelines and to promote its implementation in national legislation. The indicator to measure progress in objective 2.1 was number of parties with national hazardous waste management strategies or plans in place. There was also a sub-indicator, which was number of guidelines on environmentally sound management of waste developed. So the report highlights again that given the shortage of data, of information at hand, notably because the national reporting does not cover 100% of the parties, it was indeed difficult to assess the exact percentage of parties who have hazardous waste management strategy or plans in place. Nevertheless, the report highlighted that the convention was very successful in conducting work, developing, guidance, manuals through the expert working group on environmentally sound management. So lots of work has been done on the matter of ESM through the expert working group on ESM and the development of a ESM toolkit. And the COP has considered that the expert working group has completed its work successfully. One of the findings also of the report is that this objective 2.1 is indeed in the development of technical guidelines, but also in the implementation of the technical guidelines through the national legislation. So it was felt that this objective indeed focuses so very much on the development and adoption of national legislations. And it was indicated that the development of national legislations implementing the Basel Convention may still be a difficulty in a number of parties, and that at the moment there is no mechanisms under the convention to review whether parties have legislations implementing the Basel Convention. So with those findings, some recommendations for supportive of the objective 2.1 have been put forward. The first recommendation is 46, and it speaks very much regarding the issue of the development of national legislations for the implementation of the convention. And so to overcome this issue that it could still be lacking in a number of countries, the COP-15 could be entrusting the ICC to review within available resources and according to the COP priorities established for each biennium. So the ICC could be entrusted to review parties' implementations of the convention into national law for consideration of COP-16 and subsequent meetings. Appropriate budgetary allocation in the budget to provide support to ICC for undertaking this work would need to be made or are recommended. So now we'll continue with objective 2.2, which is to pursue the prevention and minimization of hazardous waste and other waste generation at source, especially through supporting and promoting activities designed to reduce at the national level the generation and hazard potential of hazardous and other wastes. The indicator for assessing progress toward objective 2.2 was the number of parties that have developed and implemented national strategies, plans or programs for reducing the regeneration and hazard potential of hazardous and other wastes. So through in terms of findings, the report highlights that through national reports, 46.5% of parties in 2011 and 52% of parties in 2017 indicated that they have developed and implemented national strategies, plans, or programs for reducing the generation and hazardous potential of hazardous and other wastes. Reporting also on generation of hazardous and other waste has also improved substantively as of 2016. Even though it is no longer required for parties to provide generation data as part of the national report. Did 53% of parties provided such data on generation overall in 2016. This has related implication, for the contribution towards the monitoring and review of progress of the SDGs. However, it was highlighted that there are currently challenges in comparability of reported data on waste collected from households between parties, resulting from differences in definitions and concepts. This finding comes from the publication Waste Without Frontiers, which attempted to provide an overview worldwide of amount being transboundary moved across countries, but also generated in individual countries. So there was this difficulty found that it was difficult to compare reported data on waste collected. And the publication indeed pointed out that this challenge could be addressed through the Basel Convention Household Waste Partnership. So from these findings, the report recommends in paragraph 50 that the COP should or could seek the provision of waste generation data once every 4 years, particular for the process view and reporting under the SDGs, among others, but you see there are also national benefits to that. And also to update the Waste Without Frontiers 2 report in the biennium 2021-22. This could serve also as a basis for an existing baseline in case the COP wishes to adopt or to develop a future strategic framework. Paragraph 42 sets out another recommendation, which is that the COP-15, considering the overall guidance document on the environmentally sound management of household waste, should address the issues of differences in definitions and concepts that are used to define waste collected from households to help better assess the issue of generation of household and other waste as defined by the Convention. This was pointed out in the publication Waste Without Frontiers 2. Moving along to Objective 2.3, to support and promote capacity building for parties, including technological capability through technology needs assessments and technology transfer, so as to reduce the generation and hazard potential of hazardous and other waste. The indicator was number of parties that have developed and implemented national strategies, plans, or programs for hazardous waste minimization, with 2 sub-indicators: number of parties receiving capacity building support that report reductions in hazardous waste generation, and number of parties receiving capacity building support for hazardous waste minimization. So on this objective 2, data that was analyzed in the report show that hazardous waste and other waste generation continues to grow at the global level. While there have not been significant number of capacity building of effort over the decades regarding waste reduction and minimization, there has been a slight increase in regional technical assistance project in this regard, especially in the area of plastics. Additionally, there has been attention paid by the COP hazardous waste reduction and minimization over the decade, starting with the Cartagena Declaration. And there has been a significant increase in the number of guidance documents and manuals directed at that question. A few workshops have been held and resulted in valuable lessons learned. As a result also of the 2019 questionnaire, further examples of waste prevention and minimization systems have been shared. It was also noted in the report that inventories are a key basis for undertaking national generation statistics. So from those findings, the report recommends that building on existing database of examples of waste prevention and minimization systems under the convention, parties should be invited again to share successful national examples of waste reduction and minimization efforts, and those should be used by the Secretariat when delivering technical assistance activities and tailoring, tailoring those systems or practices and examples into models that are workable for the countries that are developing countries or countries that have specific needs in addressing this question. It was also felt in this area that the Waste Without Frontiers 2 could be further publicized so that parties can benefit from its data and conclusions in the area of waste prevention and minimization. Additionally, further technical assistance activities should be conducted by the Secretariat related to inventories. And when doing so, such a training should also be linked to the development of national implementing legislation. Objective 2.4, to facilitate national, regional and international commitment with regard to the management of priority waste streams, as identified by the Programme of Work of the Convention, taking into account the priorities of developing countries and countries with economies in transition and in accordance with the requirements of the Convention. We have as an indicator number of programs, projects or activities carried out by parties jointly with other parties or together with other stakeholders that aimed at the environmental sound management of priority waste streams, and those have been monitored and assessed to achieve this goal. So for the objective 2.4, yes, it was felt that the approach by the COP using the open-ended working group, the small intersessional working groups and lead countries have been very successful in keeping pace with the demands for new and updated technical guidelines on priority waste streams. And that in the report, a number of older technical guidelines, those that are not currently under work, have been identified, have been identified as not being translated into the six UN languages, nor haven't been recently updated. So it notes that it's up to the Conference of the Parties to decide on starting work on updating technical guidelines and to request the Secretariat to arrange for the translation of technical guidelines as appropriate. Budget has been allocated. So as the development of technical guidelines is a core activity of the Convention, development of technical guidelines, enhancements of the dissemination, training and technical assistance activities on adopted guidelines should be useful and appears fitting. So from those findings, a number of recommendations are put forward. The first one set out in 61 paragraph. The current approach to establishing work on technical guidelines is successful and should continue. update or development of future technical guidelines should be prioritized according to their relevance for the fulfillment of the objectives and related indicators of a future strategic framework. 62, any party concerned with the updating or translation of Basel technical guidelines should draw this to the attention of the COP. Third recommendation, highlight to the COP that it should consider prioritization of enhancements of dissemination, training, and other technical assistance activities on adopted technical guidelines. Objective 2.5, enhance and promote the sustainable use of resources by improving the management of hazardous and other waste and to encourage the recognition of waste as a resource. Main indicator is percentage of parties that collect information on the generation, management, and disposal of hazardous waste and other waste. And then we have 4 specific sub-indicators. I'm conscious of the time, so I will maybe go a bit faster on the remaining slides of my presentation to follow some discussion. So because I heard that the chair of the small intersessional working group is with us. So for this objective 2.5, yes, it was felt that the data necessary to determine whether the indicator and sub-indicators were met were quite limited. So the data was quite limited. Basic data on national generation and recycling levels is quite limited in trees. And also because the reporting format does not request much of the information that were required to inform the indicator and sub-indicators. So here there is a recommendation that is directed to the development of a future national framework should the COP decide to do so. For goal 3, which is the promotion of the implementation of ESM as an essential contribution to the attainment of sustainable livelihood, the Millennium Development Goals, and the protection of human health and the environment. There was a first objective 3.1, which is to develop national and regional capacity, particularly through the Basel Convention regional and coordinating centers, by integrating waste management issues into national sustainable development strategies and plan for sustainable livelihood. So here the indicator was number of parties reporting to the COP on the integration of waste and hazardous waste issues into their national development plans or strategies. So it was felt that despite the mandate by the COP to assist parties upon request to integrate waste management issues into their national sustainable development plan, no funding had been received for this work, and no parties have requested such assistance. However, it was felt indeed an important aspect of the work, and also connections with the sustainable development agenda. As you know, there are a number of indicators there, objectives and targets that are relevant, for which the convention is highly relevant. And so also taking into account the current work of the ICC, that is also recommending to the COP to assist parties to include, yes, to reflect their national reporting needs in their sustainable development plans. So taking all of this into account, the recommendation 69 goes with a view to improving the implementation of the convention and taking into account the outcome of the work of the ICC. The COP could provide guidance on how individual parties can integrate their needs under the convention into their sustainable development cooperation frameworks. Objective 3.2, which is to promote cooperation with national, regional, and international bodies, in particular cooperation and coordination between the 3 conventions to improve environmental working conditions through the environmentally sound management of hazardous and other wastes, with the indicator number of activities on common issues undertaken by the bodies under the 3 conventions. Here, as the cooperation and coordination is between the 3 conventions is really now the modus operandi of the work. A possible future, there is basically only the recommendation going to the development of a possible future strategic framework. So I won't go into the detail of that. All right, so now I'll move on to the issue of how this will be considered by the upcoming COP. So you see on the screen the 4 documents that will be presented to the next COP. You will have a main working document on the strategic framework. You will have an executive summary of the report, which would be made as an addendum and will be translated in made available in the 6 UN languages. And then you will have the full-fledged draft report, which will be contained as an INF in English only. And then there will be an additional INF, which will set out additional comments received from parties and observers on the report, on the final draft report, and also setting out views on whether to develop a future strategic framework or develop an effectiveness evaluation pursuant to paragraph 7 of the Article 15 of the Convention. Similar to other processes that I've done under other conventions, it was also requested that relevant recommendations or recommendations that are directed to agenda items of the COP-15 be reflected in working documents of those issues, and to the extent possible be given effect in the draft decisions being proposed to the COP. So on the slide you have a table which shows how the relevant recommendations of the report on the strategic framework have been reflected in the working documents on the matters being submitted to the COP. So paragraphs of recommendations that are underlined are directly given effect in the documents listed on the first column, while those paragraphs of recommendations that are not underlined are just reference, cross-reference. So this basically gives you a bit of understanding how the recommendations will be taken up in the documents being prepared for the COP. So basically each document will have a specific paragraph on relevant recommendations of the strategic framework and indicate how the recommendations are given effect in the draft decision. So, as indicated before, there are also other types of recommendations for the consideration of the COP. So there are also recommendations of overarching nature pertaining to the possible development of a future strategic framework or effectiveness evaluation framework, and those will be built into the draft decision of the document on the strategic framework. There are also more detailed and specific recommendations that are set out in the report on the framework, the objectives, the indicators of the framework. Should the COP, that could be used perhaps for future work if the COP decides to proceed with the development of a future strategic framework. And then I mentioned before, there is a current possibility or opportunity offered to parties and observers to provide further comments on the final draft report, as well to share their views on the possibility to develop a future strategic framework or an effectiveness evaluation framework. So an invitation was sent last November, and the invitation for comments and views to be submitted going on until the 17th of March 2021. Well, sorry for taking so much time. This concludes now my presentation on the findings and recommendations of the report on the strategic framework. Thank you for your attention. I would like perhaps quickly turn to Mr. Samhan, the chair of the Small Intersessional Working Group. He's here with us. If you would like to react or give a few remarks on this work to the group. Thank you.
Mr. Samhan, can you hear Marilyn? Mr. Samhan? Marilyn, there seems... Mr. Samhan, can you hear me?
Hello?
Marilyn is asking if you want to take the floor.
Yes,
I hear you.
Yeah, Mr. Samhan, hi. I just wanted to welcome you to the webinar and give you the opportunity to say a few words to the participants of the webinar, if you wish so.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As a chair of the small interstational working group on the strategic framework, it's my pleasure and honor to welcome you today for one of the two global webinars conducted on the report on the final evaluation of the strategic framework for the implementation of the Basel Convention for 2012 to 2021. The final evaluation report, which will be presented and was presented already to you today, concludes by the 10th meeting of the conference of the parties in 2011 in Cartagena. Sorry. The strategic framework provided the last 10 years with a vision, guiding principles, means of implementation, strategic goals and objectives for guiding actions of parties and observers in the implementation of the Basel Convention. As you remember, the framework is structured along three main goals. First, the effective implementation of the parties' obligations on transboundary movements of hazardous and other waste. Second, strengthening the environmentally sound management of the hazardous and other waste. And finally, promoting the implementation of the environmentally sound management as an essential contribution to the attainment of sustainable livelihood, the previous Millennium Development Goals, and the protection of human health and environment. The final evaluation report provides us with a unique opportunity to comprehensively take stock and reflect on the actions that have been undertaken under the Convention during the last decade for the attainment of the strategic framework's goals. By comparing data from 2011 to 2019 from a large range of information sources, from dedicated questionnaire surveys, national reports, to publications and various subsidiary studies reports, the report sets out far-reaching conclusions and recommendations pertaining to the ongoing work and processes under the Convention. It also puts forward recommendations on a possible new strategic framework on effectiveness evaluation should the COP wish to consider such options for the future. I'd like to express my pleasure to engage with you today on the main findings, conclusions, and recommendations of the report in preparation for the 15th meeting of the conference of the parties, as parties and observers still have an opportunity to make contributions to this work by submitting to the Secretariat by 17 March 2021 further comments on the report itself, as well as views or whether to develop a further strategic framework and or effectiveness. Allow me to conclude by thanking the other members of the small interstational working group for their hard work and substantive contribution towards the preparation of the final evaluation report. I would like to also thank the Secretariat and Ms. Danielle, the consultant who helped us prepare the report, for their continued support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Samhan, for your words, your kind words to the group. I think we will now open a question and answer session so that participants have the opportunity to ask questions and the Secretariat to respond to them. Also, if other members want to add anything to responses being provided, feel to do so. I can see the hand of Michael Ernst. Please, you have the floor, Mr. Ernst.
Yes, thank you very much, Marilene. Yeah, thank you to you, first of all, for this interesting presentation. Also, a big thanks to the work of the Smartization Working Group and the whole Secretariat on preparing this very comprehensive document. I have a few questions on the further steps. The first question is, would it be possible to circulate the presentation to the members? I see you nodding, thank you. Then you provided in the last 2-3 slides the documents which will be prepared or are under preparation. My question, when would these be considered? Because the current discussion is about having possibly an online segment of the COP this year and a face-to-face segment next year. And currently there is nothing on the agenda for this online COP this year. So what would happen with these documents and when would they be considered? And also linked to that is another question. You informed that there is an invitation for comments on this document until 17 March. But in the light of the developments on the COP, would it be possible or useful to have a further invitation for comments at a later stage and with the deadline, of course, which cannot be set now, because first we need to await the outcome of the Joint Bureau meeting on the organization of the COPs. Because just as a background for us, it would probably be difficult to provide comprehensive comments by 17 March because we were so much engaged with all other work which was pressing under the convention, all these technical guidelines and expert groups and we had in the last weeks and months. And also the question, if nothing or no action is happening in July at an online COP, if it's decided to hold such an online COP, then my feeling is we also have more time to digest and make up our minds on this report and also on the next steps, which are, let's say, up for discussion in connection with that report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, for those very good questions. Yes, so the presentation will be circulated. On the second question, yes, so as you have mentioned, the bureaus are currently discussing and having consultations with the regions on a possible new alternative format for the organization of the 2021 COPs, given the current situation with COVID-19. It was indeed agreed that it wouldn't be possible to hold the 2021 BRS COPs as face-to-face as originally planned in July, given the exceptional situation with the pandemic. So they are now exploring another format for the conduct of the meetings. They are expected to resume their considerations next week at a joint bureau meeting. The current, so there could be several options for the organizations of the meeting. One of the options that is being considered at the moment is undertaking the meeting or organizing the meetings in 2 parts. First part, which would be held online in July 2021, and the second part that would be held as a face-to-face later in 2022. So this is what is currently being discussed by the bureaus. For the online segment, if such an online segment is decided, they're also discussing what would be the agenda items to be considered by the COPs in their online segment. They are thinking of having a limited number of agenda items, limited to those essential and time-sensitive items of the COP agendas, taking into account the online format. Therefore, we don't have yet for the moment clarity on which agenda items would be considered in the online segment or face-to-face segment, if so decided. But I would say that after the end of next week, we would normally we are expected to have a decision, and we would then further communicate this to the parties so that they can organize themselves and be prepared. For the moment, the understanding is that during the online segment, there wouldn't be any, issues of really of substantive matters. They would be mostly issues of procedural nature and the issue of the budget for 2022 that needs to be really adopted by the end of this year. So it could be anticipated that indeed the agenda item on the strategic framework would not be part of the online segment, given these considerations. In that case, it would mean that the agenda item on the strategic framework would be considered for the face-to-face segment of the COPs later on in 2022. Nevertheless, all the documents for the COPs are going to be prepared for the start of the meetings, so decided, which would be in July. So yes, if this is all confirmed by the bureaus, the documents of the strategic frameworks would then be considered by the COP in the face-to-face part of its meetings. Therefore, there could be additional time till the dates of the face-to-face part are set to welcome or invite comments on the report or views on the possible strategic framework or evaluation, effectiveness evaluation of the convention after July, if you wish. So I think it's totally possible that this invitation for comments be extended time 2021. I hope this clarifies. It's as you said, we are at the time where we don't have firm answers about this, but we should be able to have something a bit more clear to provide to parties at the beginning of March about how the COPs will be organized. But in terms of documents, we are going ahead with preparations of documents, the working documents and the addenda for the start of the meeting in July. Thank you. So I want now to perhaps invite other questions or comments on the presentation and the work on the strategic framework from other participants, if so they wish. Please feel free to raise your hand if you want to take the floor, or you can also send a question through the chat. I cannot see okay. If there are no other questions or comments on the presentation and the final evaluation of the strategic framework, then we would close the webinar. I'd like to thank you very much for participating into this webinar. The presentation will be shared with you after the webinar. Feel free to contact the Secretariat for any questions on this work, as well as other work in general. It's here to help as necessary or provide the necessary information. Yes, and we will have another webinar tomorrow at 4 p.m. covering different time zones. Okay, so thank you so much for your participation today. wish you a lovely day, a lovely evening, and hope to see you soon online during another webinar of the Secretariat or other online meetings. Thank you very much. Day, everyone.